through two of the stories in my book. These are so important that they were the very first two stories I wrote when I knew I was going to write the book, because I really felt God's presence, in the moment, palpably. There was no question in my mind. The first one I'm going to talk about, it's in the book, it's called Epiphany in India. And before I tell that story, I just want to read one scripture reference from Romans chapter 1, verse 20, because it relates to this story at short. Ever since the creation of the world, his eternal power and divine nature, invisible though they are, have been understood and seen through the things he has made. This epiphany of sorts came to me on a memorable trip to India. New York Life had a joint venture partner in India, Max India, a company that was in the healthcare business. They owned hospitals and clinics. And after a board meeting in Delhi, the chairman of that company said to me, "Fred, I'd like to take you to see our new cardiac facility." And he said, "Would you like to go?" And frankly, I didn't want to go because it was Delhi in the afternoon and traffic was horrible. But I said, "Yeah, sure, let's go." So we got in the car and we drove to the hospital. And as we were walking in this beautiful building in the big atrium, he said to me, "Fred, as long as you're here, how would you like to observe a procedure?" I really didn't want to do that. But I thought, I'll be in an amphitheater 15 feet above the operating table, and, if I get a little queasy, I can turn away and not watch. But then, to my surprise, the chief of staff marched me into the scrub room. He told me to strip down totally. I'd take my socks off. And, they said, I scrubbed down. They gave me booties and a gown and a hat and a mask. And then the chief of staff marches me into the operating room where they're near the end of a quadruple bypass surgery. And he walks up to the anesthesiologist who's at the head of the operating table and asks her to step aside, which she does. And then he puts me right at the operating table. The top of the patient's head is like 2 inches from my stomach. And, you've got a chief surgeon, assistant surgeon, chief and assistant nurses. They didn't even flinch. They didn't even look at me. They just continued their work. But they were near the end, and there was right in front of my nose, about 18 inches away, is an open chest cavity with a beating heart. As they're sewing on the final sutures. And this really was a profound spiritual experience for me. I mean, the tears were rolling down my cheeks, and I was afraid they were going to drop into the patient's face, But they were caught, fortunately, and absorbed by the surgical mask. But I'm looking at this, and I'm just marveling at this heart. You don't think about your heart beating continuously. Unless you go outside and try and run a mile, don't do that. But if you go outside and you try and run a mile, then you'll think about it, because it's very obvious, okay? But you don't think about this marvelous human body and the marvel of God's creation. And this heart is beating continuously. Even an unhealthy heart could beat 60, 70, 80 years. It doesn't stop when you sleep. It just keeps going. And I thought to myself, how could anyone not believe that this is divinely created? How does this happen? And how could any heart surgeon not have faith in God and believe that this was a divine creation? So now I kind of approach life with a new wonderment, and I kind of marvel daily at all of God's incredible creation. And in fact, something, I'm actually astounded by the existence of life in any form. I mean, think about it. A thimble full of water from a pond, or a teaspoonful of soil from your backyard, has more living organisms than are known to exist in the rest of the universe. Think about that. I mean, it's just remarkably incredible. And, as an actuary, some of you know by training I'm an actuary, and I'm trained in statistics and probability. You know, it's far easier for me to believe that this human body and these marvelous creations were done by God. And they weren't simply by chance an evolution to a human being from a single cell amoeba over billions of years. I just don't buy it. I'm sorry. People may disagree with me. And I'm not saying there isn't some form of evolution. But this is God's creation. And, you know, I think about how often I've missed the opportunity to marvel at the wonder of God's creation in plants, animals, in all forms of life. And what a shame that we kind of toil through our daily life and we don't stop to reflect on that. So, like me, I think every person in this room has multiple opportunities to stop what you're doing and catch a glimpse of God. I think we all have that opportunity, but what a shame that we don't do it more often. So that's my story, and what I'd like to, I hope some of you will comment on at your table, is when you've caught a glimpse of God.